Good morning, everyone. My name is Louisa Calame, and I'm an undergraduate student at McGill University and a representative of the Palestinian Students and Scholars at Risk Network. I'm joined today by representatives from the Canadian Federation of Students, which is an organization representing 530,000 members from 63 student unions across Canada. We're all here today to express our deep concern with the Government of Canada's discriminatory treatment of Palestinian student visa applicants and to demand immediate action from the Prime Minister and the Minister of Immigration. PSSAR was formed to support Gazan postgraduate research students in accessing education, helping them complete their applications and navigate the additional barriers created by mass displacement and famine. For almost 2 years, we've raised this issue directly with IRCC. We've been met with meetings, promises, and far too often misleading information. Despite the Minister of Immigration's public commitment to review every Gazan student's file, the majority of students still have not heard back. Those who have heard back describe aggressive, repetitive interrogations that feel less like standard screening and much more like a search for any reason to reject their applications. In May, the Minister of Immigration stated in the House of Commons that all study permits for Gazans would be processed. Although her mic cut out, MPs heard her say they would be processed in 10 days. In June, IRCC committed that files for students with biometrics on record in Egypt would be resolved within a month. 2 months later, many of those students still have had an interview request and no update. After years of waiting and hours of interrogation, some of the students have chosen to withdraw as they've lost hope in the possibility of receiving a response from Canada. Even after the interviews, there's often still no decision. The students are now confused, stuck, and have lost hope. This pattern of shifting deadlines and unclear answers is not what Canadians should expect from their government. Our universities and our academic community deserve transparency, not another promise with no follow-through. We believe this isn't simply a backlog. It's a process designed to exhaust these students until they give up and withdraw their applications. As a student at one of Canada's leading research universities, I'm appalled that our government is treating my colleagues and peers in this way. Alongside my colleagues here today and student unions across the country, we are calling on Prime Minister Carney to show real leadership and to direct the Ministers of Immigration, Public Safety, and Global Affairs to work together to resolve this immediately. The repeated false promises and misinformation from IRCC is irresponsible and an unacceptable standard of operation for a Canadian ministry. Canadian universities and academics deserve accurate and transparent answers from our government officials. We believe IRCC is attempting to prolong the process and intimidate students until they willingly withdraw their applications from Canadian universities. This attempt to prevent Palestinian students from being able to continue their education and improve their lives is a racist double standard. As young Canadians and future leaders, we demand accountability from our elected officials. Lena Diab is pursuing a discriminatory policy of exclusion against Gazan students. Inaction from Mark Carney and other elected members of Parliament is not something our generation will allow or forget. I'm now going to pass it off to Omar Mousa.
Good morning. My name is Omar Mousa, and I am the National Executive Representative of the Canadian Federation of Students, Ontario. Today, we are releasing a public letter signed on behalf of the 530,000 members of the Canadian Federation of Students to address our extreme concern and disappointment with this government's delay of Ghazawi students' study permits. As a result of both the government's inaction and their lack of funding to our post-secondary graduate and undergraduate programs, 10 students have lost their academic opportunities. 130 more are left in uncertainty due to the IRCC's operational inefficiencies. Students refuse to stay silent while our peers, our future colleagues, our collaborators have their futures erased by administrative neglect. Neglect that has already cost 2 lives. 2 prospective PhD students admitted to the University of Waterloo were killed before they could even reach Canada. Other admitted students have suffered critical injuries while waiting for their visas to be processed. Scholasticide does not end with the destruction of schools and the killing of educators. It continues throughout the intentional and discriminatory delays and rejections that students face when attempting to continue their education as they are being forced to leave their homeland. As the delays continue to drag on, our students continue to lose the opportunity to grow in their academic journey, and our research capacity loses more of the talent that has already been recruited and funded. Numerous students who did end up making it to any interviews describe baseless, hostile questioning, clearly aimed at finding any sort of pretext to reject, not a genuine screening. A well-meaning, well-developed society is marked by the intentional growth of the quality of education. And as all people in Gaza are facing the ongoing genocide being enacted by the Zionist entity, and with our government's direct complicity in it, it is clear that they will continue to prioritize profit, even if that goes against their own public commitments. After 2 years of delay, it becomes evident that Lina Diab, the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship, and the federal government are not trying to resolve this issue. Instead of helping the students move forward with their lives, the ministry is prolonging the distress of the students by avoiding making a decision on the status of their applications. In June of 2026, over 32,000 study permits were issued in 30 days, an 80% year-over-year increase. All while over 130 Palestinian postgraduate students who have been admitted to our universities enter their 24th month of waiting. The constraint was never the capacity, and it's clear from the ministry's own data. Canadian law already gives the minister a fast, lawful way to fix this. Section 12.8 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act says that when a requirement, such as in-person biometrics, is impossible to fulfill, it no longer applies. Section 25.2 lets the minister exempt applicants from the requirement directly. IRCC does not need new legislation or months of study. The tools already exist and they must be utilized. This is exactly what was done for Afghan applicants in 2021 and Ukrainian applicants in 2022, when biometric collection became too dangerous. Ghazawi students are now facing a double standard from this government, being told that these processes are more complicated, despite the fact that, historically, that hasn't been the case. Students have had to endure extreme hardship during the genocide in Gaza, difficulty getting out and leaving family behind, and living in difficult economic conditions in Egypt. They have persevered and gained admissions to Canadian programs. We are now calling on the government of Canada to act now for the minister to honor their own public commitment and to let these students begin their academic careers that has been offered to them before it is too late. I'll now pass it off to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Feltham, and I am the National Treasurer for the Canadian Federation of Students. And I want us to be very clear about who we're talking about. This is 130 Palestinian students who have earned admission on merit to 26 Canadian universities. They were accepted into high priority fields central to Canada's own economic and research priorities: artificial intelligence, public health, sustainable infrastructure, engineering, and the social sciences. And these are exactly what the researchers in Canada say that they want to attract. Instead, while RCC sits on their files, these students face life-threatening conditions in Gaza, and they watch their university's offers approaching expiry and risk losing research funding that won't wait indefinitely. And after 2 years of waiting, 11 of these students were called in for what the IRCC calls interviews, but what looks in practice like an interrogation designed to manufacture a reason to reject them or to pressure them into withdrawing. And this is not diligence. It is stalling, and it is happening to people who are already surviving a genocide. These students have had their morale and hope chipped away by the misleading information and the false hope given to them by the Minister of Immigration's remarks. They persevered through unimaginable conditions in Gaza to secure admission entirely on merit into highly competitive Canadian research programs. The extensive delays have caused immense undue hardship on these students, with many already seeing their university's offers expire and their funding run out. Other countries facing the same logistical challenges have found real solutions. Italy's University Corridors program has safely brought 246 Gazan students into Italy's universities since last September, coordinating directly with authorities in the region to meet security and biometric requirements. France has evacuated students to complete biometrics in Jordan. Belgium, Germany, and Ireland have taken similar steps, and the United Kingdom has waived the in-person biometric requirements for Gazan students entirely. Canada has not lacked the legal tools or the precedent. It has lacked the will. 14 graduate student unions representing students at universities across this country are calling on the Government of Canada to stop treating routine caution as an excuse for an indefinite delay and to bring Canadians Canada's response in line with our G7 allies. It is clear that Lina Diab cannot and will not get the job done that is required. We are calling on the Prime Minister Carney to either hold her accountable for what she has committed or replace her entirely with a minister who will actually understand and can handle the file and do what is needed to get these students into Canada. I will pass it over to Owen Skeen.
Good morning. My name is Owen Skeen. I'm the chairperson of the Canadian Federation of Students, Nova Scotia. These 130 students are students like me and like every one of my colleagues joining here today. They may have the same ambitions, the same academic achievements, and they do have the same right to pursue their ambitions. The only difference between us is geographic limitations by colonial borders and bureaucracies. Two of our incoming peers, Sally and Dahlia, were killed while waiting for their paperwork to be processed. This is why student unions across this country feel a moral obligation to speak out for people who are trapped right now in life-threatening conditions simply because they are still waiting on us. IRCC has confirmed there is no biometric collection center in Gaza. The nearest are in Egypt and Jordan, reached through crossings that are themselves dangerous and unpredictable. Demanding biometrics inside a region with no facility to provide them isn't caution. It's an impossible bar that Canada has chosen not to apply to applicants from other conflict zones. Canadian universities already made their commitment. 26 institutions admitted and funded these students on merit. We're asking our government and our universities to honor that commitment too. We also call on all student unions, student associations, and student societies whose potential fellow members are currently being prevented from joining us here to express our internationalist solidarity and to act up for those students who have the right to be represented by your organizations in pursuit of justice, safety, and the universal right to education. Today, the Canadian Federation of Students and 14 graduate student unions are calling on the Government of Canada to apply the exemption already available under IRPA 12.8 and defer biometric collection until students reach a third country or arrive in Canada, establish alternative and remote processing options and facilitate safe passage for approved applicants, adjudicate outstanding applications on a published timeline with public reporting on applications received, approved, refused, and pending, end the undisclosed additional screening applied to Gaza-based applicants, or disclose its criteria, and build a consistent standing pathway for students displaced by war so Canada isn't improvising its response every time. Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Lina Diab, who was elected right here in so-called Nova Scotia and serves as the Member of Parliament for Halifax West, Peggy's Cove, must be held accountable. Students, workers, and constituents throughout this region have gathered at Diab's office during regular rallies and sit-ins over months, demanding action and demanding transparency. We demand that Minister Lina Diab hold herself accountable to the commitment she made in the House of Commons to process these study permits without further delay, and we ask that her fellow members of Parliament also hold her accountable to that same promise. Solidarity from Jabuktuk Mi'kma'ki and Free Palestine.
Good morning. My name is Oghenerukevwe Erifeta, and I'm the regional lead for the Canadian Federation of Students of Saskatchewan. I want to close by making one thing very clear. This is not a concern limited to a handful of campuses. It reaches from Newfoundland to British Columbia and everywhere in between, including here on the prairies. 14 graduate student unions signing on to this letter means 14 student bodies, representing tens of thousands of students who have looked at these files and reached the same conclusion. something is wrong and it has gone on for far too long. Saskatchewan may not have one of the universities, one of the 26 universities holding an admitted Gazan's file, but they are not isolated. Our students stand in solidarity with the ones who are. We know what it means to wait on a government file that decides whether your education and in some cases your life and safety moves forward. We refuse to treat that as someone else's problem. This is bigger than any one ministry's backlog. It is a test of whether Canada's word, the commitments our universities have made, the commitments the minister has made in the House of Commons actually means something. Every week of delay is a week these students spend closer to losing their funding, their admission, or worse. We're not asking Canada for anything it hasn't already done for students in crisis. We're asking for the same consistency, the same transparency, and the same urgency. On behalf of student unions in every region of this country, we call on the Prime Minister and the Minister of Immigration to solve these 130 files now. Not next month, not after another review, now. Thank you all for being here today. We'll open the floor for questions.
Thank you. Merci. We will now take questions from journalists on Zoom. If you have a question, please use the raise hand function. We'll take one question and one follow-up. Pour les journalistes qui sont joints à nous sur Zoom, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction main levée. Nous allons prendre une question et une question de suivi. David Koch, please go ahead.
Hello. So at the level of individual student unions, do CFS locals, in your view, have a responsibility to advocate for students who have been accepted into their university, but who remain trapped in Gaza? I think Owen Skeen touched on this a little bit. Perhaps he could elaborate, or others.
Am I good to just respond? I'll assume so. Yeah, I think I touched on it a bit, but I think it's not outside the mandates of our existing student unions. Our bylaws, including through the Canadian Federation of Students, make it very clear that we believe in free and accessible, high-quality education for all. That doesn't just mean the people who are considered acceptable by any currently elected colonial government within this country. It means all. So when there are students who have been accepted on the merits to an institution and they're being prevented from accessing that institution due to barriers set up by our government, I think it's absolutely the responsibility of student unions to speak up, to engage in dissent, and to be clear about the rights of students throughout the world, speaking from internationalist perspectives and engaging in an approach that centers solidarity and centers students, whether they're current members or potential members of their organization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For more context or background, the University of New Brunswick Graduate Students Association told me last month they cannot comment on the case of Bara, a Palestinian student in Gaza who's been accepted into UNB. The VP academic told me in a statement, for privacy reasons, we are unable to comment on any specific individual circumstances. This is despite the fact that Bara, the student, had reached out to the GSA for support by mid-July. As of yesterday, he hadn't received any response. And in their statement, the GSA also said an individual becomes a student only once enrollment is complete. They went on to say the Graduate Students Association represents enrolled students. It does not represent applicants or prospective students. So just any comment on this distinction? It seems that they're washing their hands of this, saying that this is not an enrolled student, and for privacy reasons, we can't speak about his case. Your comment on that?
Yeah, I could say there could be particularities within any one student union. I'm not familiar in detail with the bylaws or other governing documents of this student union. But as far as I understand, even when there isn't a stated mandate requiring representation for a student under these conditions, a mandate to take positions that are pro access to education can often be inferred from the general principles involved in, the governing documents of any student union. Yeah. If anybody else has comments too.
Thank you. I can elaborate a little further on it. I really appreciate this question. And again, each individual local will have their own regulations, but as the national organization and our provincial components, each of these locals are members and we represent them. So we are able to speak and provide these statements on behalf of all 500,000 members from coast to coast. These have been statements that are directed by votes from the membership. So if it's not directly coming from the local, it has been extended through the national and provincial components through their voting in national meetings. And we're always happy to continue to connect with locals directly to continue the advocacy, because we do as a provincial and national organization see that this is something that we ought to be speaking out on as a collective solidarity.
All right, thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci. C'est ce qui me fait.
Oh, sorry. If there are no other journalists, could I ask another question? Because I have other questions.
Yeah, go ahead. We have time for one more. That's no problem.
Oh, thank you. Well, this comes down to the federal government. Have you seen any indication in your meetings, for example, that if with government representatives, if you've had any, that Ottawa will budge on this? And if I can make it a double-barrel question, one imagines that Ottawa is responding to some kind of pressure, whether it's domestic, anti-Palestinian sentiment, or pressure from the United States, for example. Have you seen any indication of what is the source of this intransigence by Ottawa?
I can take an answer at this. So I don't think, at least in my experience, this is not my area of expertise, but I'm not sure what indicators would really look like. However, we have seen development with, previously we used to ask for meetings with the IRCC, and we were not replied to. We were not given any meetings, and more recently we have been. So we've had this kind of development, positive development. Even the fact that Minister Lena Diab responded at the House of Commons was new to us, because we've been advocating for this for over a year now. So I mean, I hope there's development, but unfortunately, it's nothing close to what's needed, nothing close to, everything's at a snail pace. And despite saying that there is development and getting response, the response is not positive. So, again, not my area of expertise to know what are indicators on budging, but these are the changes we've seen.
Do you have one last question, David?
Yeah. Well, similarly to the student union that I mentioned earlier, the administration of University of New Brunswick and the advocacy organization Universities Canada, which UNB belongs to, they also seem to wash their hands of the situation, at least publicly. UNB told me that they cannot comment because the visa process is between the applicant and the IRCC. Universities Canada didn't respond to a request for comment. Your thoughts on the silence from so many levels on this issue?
I think to have good thoughts about people would be to think that, there are a lot of issues other than Palestinian cases with the study permits. And I would hope that I would hope that it's just a misunderstanding, that they're not aware that these are special circumstances, that this is not only like, unprecedented in the sense that we've seen progress with previous students in crisis compared to now. The Palestinian students are ignored. And even, a few times I would raise this issue when they would, and, whoever would tell me, but all study permits are facing issues, especially in academia, talking to professors, the default is, oh yeah, we've seen this issue with study permits. Study permits are really difficult to acquire. So I think some people still have that misunderstanding, and it's unfortunate, and we ask them to hear us out. Other than that, I really can't explain their actions. It's very disappointing.
Thank you. Merci. That's all the time we had for this press conference. This concludes the press conference. Merci, c'est tout le temps que nous avions pour cette conférence de presse. Ceci met fin à la conférence.